what is digital product management and why is it important when considering user experience and online conversion?
First, we have to identify whose problem are we solving. Do we even know who is our customer? And what is the problem that we are solving for that individual?
How do you ensure that the user experience remains a priority when developing a new digital product?
I would say
In today's episode, we're joined by Axaya Kansal. Axaya is a veteran product manager who has dedicated most of his career to enhancing user experiences and simplifying customer challenges through innovative digital solutions. Throughout his dynamic career, Axaya has spearheaded product strategies across various sectors including fintech, telecom, retail, and marketing tech. His work has consistently focused on developing digital products that not only meet user needs, but also streamline processes and enhance security, making everyday transactions effortless for millions of users worldwide. Axaya is a thought leader and a strategic visionary known for his motto, innovation through collaboration. Join us today as we dive in and have a conversation with Axaya about the challenges and triumphs of creating digital products that transform the end user experience and enhance how we engage with technology every day. Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode of the Digital Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Eli Adams. Today's episode is brought to you by fireusmarketing.com, where SEO solutions pave the way to digital excellence. Welcome to the show, Axaya.
thank you so much, Eli. That was some introduction. Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too. You have a pretty awesome background, which I'm excited to dive into and learn a little bit more about you. But just for the users, just for the listeners, I want them to kind of understand like our history and how we know each other. And I'm real excited to learn more about you on a personal level. But you and I worked together at Young Living for a handful of years, a couple years ago, where I was in the United States, you were over Europe, and for the digital product management, right? And at times we were on the same team, at times we were side by side, at times, you know, things changed over the years, but I always enjoyed working with you. I always knew when I got on a call that I needed to be prepared because Axaya was one of the digital product managers that knew his stuff like you wouldn't believe. Like you had data that was always incredible. You were always talking to the end user and understanding them and doing lots of surveys. And I really appreciated the effort that you put into that, which is why I'm real excited to have you on the podcast today to talk about digital product management and how it relates to the end user experience. A lot of our listeners are really into the marketing side of the user experience. But I want to bring a couple of episodes on about digital product management because it actually impacts the end user experience more than most people know, right? And so I'm excited to dive in and have you explain how that works from your experience and your standpoint. But before we do that, I want to dive in and learn a little bit more on a personal level about Axaya. So tell us where you're from, what you want to be when you were little. Let's dive in and learn who Axaya is.
Perfect. No, thank you so much. And I think yes, you're right. I really enjoyed my time working with you at Young Living as well. I think you were one of those people who were very much excited about the user experience journey. And I coming from the background of the product management, building those tools, the combination was great. And this is why I always, we always enjoyed our conversations, whether it was about doing market research, bringing the right input in and bringing the right things for our users. It was a good time. But
Yeah.
coming back, who I was, where I am and why I am here. I think I grew up in a very small, town in India.
Okay.
And I grew up as a normal kid who was always very curious. I think one of the things, key things that I would always, hear from my teachers, from my friends is about this whole curiosity thing about the things. I would be very observant about things and curious to know more. I think that grew up in me. And I, when I completed my schooling, went to do my in engineering. I'm an electrical engineer, by the way, by my education. And soon after, when I was passing by out of my college, the first thing that struck me was, how technology is changing so fast. And we are talking about back in 2003, 4, when we had those big phones, we had, internet coming in, that weird sound of connectivity, remember? So I've come through that evolution of stage where the technology has moved so heavily and everything was talking about VLSI designing at that time. But you know what? There was a small sector which was developing, which was telecom. Now, this is great. This looks amazing. Even if, my college placement was in a company designing VLSI chips, like, no, I want to go try this new device called mobile. the big ones. Remember those big ones? Yeah, you can literally hit people, and they were more like protection devices than communication devices. I
Hmm.
come from that era of mobile first economy where I started learning. So I went into this small, not a small, but a focused telecom carrier called Spice Telecom, and I spent a lot of time there learning about how does this impact a user. What are the basic stuff that we can solve? What are the challenges that people have? And I'm talking about back in 2004, 5 when digital boom was not to its own. So, I mean, the digital maturity of the market, even in the Western world, was not very high. It was just growing up. Things were, really wanting to reach where it wanted, but it had a lot of constraints because internet was identified. The dot-com boom had happened, but it didn't reach to the hands of the people. So that's how
Hmm.
I kind of grew up. I always wanted to, from my childhood, I wanted to be a sportsman. But, at the end of the day, a sportsman is always about achieving your goals, being in team. But I think that's
Hmm.
something that also inspired me a lot to solve people's problem using technology as the key goal. I think that kind of kept very, very close to me as my values, as my motivation to continue doing what I do. And I actually started using those frameworks across industries. So even if I started with telecom, I moved to banking, then to fintech, to marketing tech, to retail. I completed, changing different industries, but using similar kind of frameworks to kind of solve problems with people. The consumer journey problems, the technological challenges. So I would always say, how do I solve the problem when I see a humankind struggling using technology as a tool? And that's
Hmm.
where I always develop this whole thing about users. The problem is at the end of the day of a user. There is a
Yeah.
particular problem everybody's facing, and then many are facing. If there are many people who are facing the same problem, it needs to be solved and then scaled. And
Hmm.
scalability can only be, supported by technology because you can't put more human bodies to scale. That's a very
Yeah.
old trivial method of scaling. No more in today's world. That's pretty much me. How I grew up, and then 1 year back, 1.5 year back, after my days with Young Living, I went on to a big unplanned sabbatical. So I just
Hmm.
wanted to redefine myself. How do I want to live next 20 years of my life? What do I want to contribute back to the society? And kind of build my different frameworks around subjects, around and topics. And then I joined Boku, which is my current company. I work with them, the fintech company specialized in local payments. But I work, solve problems around market engagement, again, digital marketing stuff and marketing technologies. But I also on the side do my mentorship, which is something which is not for money. It is more for like my endeavor towards the society, giving back to the society, helping the new entrepreneurs to identify right things that they have to do, the org structures, their strategies, basically understanding a lot of things. And in turn, I learn a lot about different industries, different problems
Hmm.
that we can solve. So this is where I am currently living my life, trying to solve problems using technology, and I'm very happy about it. Thank you so much for inviting me to this podcast because I think it's also a great tool to express ourselves, to your audience, where they can feel related to a common person like me, literally come from a very normal family, from a very normal environment, from a very normal, market, and kind of
Yeah.
learn his way out to kind of do what we are doing. I mean, nothing has been done by me. It's said, any success takes an entire village. So as I. I've done committed, tons of mistakes, but I always had the
Yeah.
opportunity and a luck to have right people along by my side or my teams along by my side, and of course some amount of luck to be successful in the market. So that's in a nutshell about me.
Nice. And that's the main reason I do this first part on the podcast is to really humanize you and make you relatable, right? I think a lot of people get into the digital space, especially if you're an owner of a company. You know you need to do marketing, you need to do more digital stuff to elevate yourself online. But a lot of times these owners are either too busy or they're intimidated by what it takes to actually be good in the digital space. And so
Correct.
I hear a lot of them say, well, that's not me. I'm not a digital person. I can't do that. And so when we talk about our upbringing, where we're from, what we went through, how we got into the space, it makes them be like, well, if that guy can do it, then I can do it. Right. And so hopefully people see that, that, we've interviewed people from all over the United States, all over the world, and you're currently in Amsterdam, right?
Yes.
Right. And so you grew up in India, moved around a couple different places, which I want to talk about as well. But then you ended up in Amsterdam, right? We've interviewed people who who grew up in the Soviet Union and now live in the United States and moving to other parts of Europe right now. I have a whole SEO series planned with like 25 different experts coming on to talk about just SEO. And there's people lined up from Germany, from London, from Pakistan, from all over the world. And so I'd love that we have this technology in this digital world to make these connections and learn from experts from around the world, right? And not just here in our little bubble. Wherever we are, we have our little bubble, right?
Absolutely.
It's so awesome to use this technology to really expand that beyond what we ever could have, a decade ago.
And I must say, you're doing a great job. And listen, you're using the technology to spend this across. It's also scalability by technology, and it's also digital,
Yeah.
right? If we were to do this one-on-one, you had to go to several places, deliver those, lectures, or identify the people. Imagine the
Yeah.
complexity of executing that thought that you had. I mean, your thought is noble, it's pious. You want to really give back to the society of, how they can be more digital, how can they embrace this whole technology. But you're using technology to do that. You're not doing it manually. You're not doing it, like one-on-one. So this is so amazing what you're doing, and your efforts to go across, reach out to different people, build the content, and work tirelessly to bring out these episodes, bring those snippets, make the usable,
Yeah.
shortcut videos around it. It's amazing. So great job what you're doing, Eli.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Akshay. Well, let's walk through. Okay, so you went to school to be an electrical engineer, and was your first job electrical engineering, or in the mobile space, or did you like graduate and say, okay, I'm gonna go into left field instead of right field? Like, walk me through that, and then from there, what made you move to different parts around the world and end up in Amsterdam?
Great. So you're right. So I did not start my job. I have never done anything around electrical engineering as an engineering, but that gave me a lot of perspective about, because electrical engineering is all physics and it's all in concept. So what it helped me to grow as an individual is to solve problems. If you can't even see them, you can't even touch them. So that kind of gave me a perspective as a professional. So I would not say my engineering degree is a waste. It was actually super useful to assemble problems, to understand problems when you can't touch and see them. Because most of
Yeah.
the time people struggle to see the problem, if they can't see or make or touch or feel it. So that gave me a perspective. But I wanted to definitely, step into the next world of technology. So when I moved into the telecom world, it was absolutely a new one. I just jumped in, and for me, first 3 months were like identifying, what am I going to do here? Am I going to do software engineering, which everybody's doing, or do I have to define the problem? And I think back then, product management was very new. In India, it was not even there. We're talking about 22, 23 years back now.
Hmm.
And I was told, just figure out some innovation, something new that we would like to offer to our users, our customers, or, the
Hmm.
mobile telecom users. So I had to go pillar to post, identifying what could be a user need apart from just buying a SIM card, using it for SMS or calling. Because we're talking about 2003, 4, when it was not even a proper GPRS. Forget about 4G or 5G. It was a
Yeah.
back then GPRS. People would not have a high amount of data. They would not have any kind of multimedia. MMS was just coming up at that time. So people would still have that wall garden approach where you can go buy a ringtone, buy a caller tune, buy whatever
Hmm.
that, remember those days. So
Yeah.
I was tasked with identifying these objectives, these problems. So I kind of grew up in that environment, bringing out these new innovations or new thought that a user would do. For that, I actually roamed about, market to market, talking to users, going to, there's a personal story associated with that. Actually, that's where I met my wife. I was on my journey to the field survey, and I was into one of these telecom centers where people come and complain about their bills and stuff. That's where I also met my wife. She was talking about certain
Nice.
things, with her problem statement around her phone, and I just,
Yeah.
we just met and we fell in love, and we are together 15 years. Imagine after that. But having said that, kind of gave me a perspective of what our users want more and more. And this is where it led me to identifying different challenges. So for example, I could tell you my first, claim to success or first solution that I feel very proud about is back then in India, we had to have national rail services. Almost 1 million people used to travel every day. But you know what? If you have to check your PNR status, you still have to go to train station, stand in a queue, and go to the manager and ask, give your number, and then they will tell you whether you have got a reserved ticket or not. I was
Hmm.
like, guys, this is too time consuming. And I used to travel with train a lot. So can't we bring it on phone? Because you're not just sitting behind the system. This mobile is also a technology. Can't we really combine this together to bring up a system which is where the user can just simply, inquire what is my PNR status? It is
Yeah.
very simple problem statement. But then it took us a lot of effort to identify how, one, we integrate this platform. So the basics before we could get to the customer journey, and this is where I think today's podcast is really important. Podcast is really important. The enablers to the digital. So this is where the thought process behind enabling a digital journey was like, how do we integrate these two systems who are, disjoint, who are absolutely heterogeneous in nature? So then the introduction of the API, and we're talking about again 22 years back, the
Yeah.
introduction of API, the introduction of, the integration between the two systems to pass an information securely, the socket, programming and all that stuff coming out, and then thinking about, okay, now we know A talks to B. We can get this
Hmm.
information. How does a user use it? Now we were like, okay, on the internet, it's easy. I can open www.x.com, but then mobile doesn't work like that because there is no internet on mobile. In fact, 99% people don't even have that GPS connection. So we had to
Hmm.
think about then the usability about, okay, should we put it on SMS? Okay, if we put it on SMS, then we have to put it on Prime, some short code number where people can send certain codes, which means we have to learn a new journey of remembering the whole user flow. We
Yeah.
lost with that because that was like the first easiest way to go. But then we moved on to a next structure, which is star 123 hash. Remember that USSD back?
Yeah.
That's like, okay, that was back then the internet of the poor. Because it was
Hmm.
not internet, but it was a real time. So you can say, okay, star 123 hash, you get a menu. Welcome to the railway system. Okay, one, PNR inquiry. Okay, one. And then you enter your PNR number and you get the status right there on your face. We simplified that journey to that level, and that could see immediate impact in the life of people. I could see so many people using it. The usage went up because it was really solving some problem for people.
Yeah.
So that was my first stack. Then I went into banking. I was like, if I can do it for the railway, I can do it for bank. So mobile
Yeah.
banking. So that's how I came into mobile banking way early in my stages. Then I joined a company which was focusing on wallet in Africa because in Africa there was no banking infrastructure, and banking infrastructure was kind of, not making sense for the bank to invest that much of money because of
Hmm.
the returns. So what we did, we converted the telecom operators as the banks. So they all became wallets, and now the entire African nations, all the African nations, 75% of their GDP actually runs on that ecosystem, which is where
Oh,
now
wow.
people feel safe to put in their money in an account which is on their handheld device. Again,
Yeah.
no internet, no GPRS, just by phone. They can submit their money, they can take out their cash, and then we develop that ecosystem saying, like, now you can put in your cash, you can take out our cash. That's done. Why don't you
Yeah.
start paying with that? So now let's start paying your taxis. The first use case was basically transferring money to their relatives in the villages.
Hmm.
So, you will be surprised to know back then when we were collecting this user data, anybody who would send a money back to their parents in village, the middleman would take up to 40% of that money for nothing. Just
Wow. Oh
because
my
somebody
God.
will send that money to that person, that money will just, take it from the bank and give the cash to the other person, take away 40%. Now with this, it was all real because the telecom shops for every nook and cranny, they could say, okay, dad, I sent you the 10 shillings. And we're talking about 10 shillings, like really, really small money, which still means a lot, probably a meal for them. Now they can
Yeah.
go to that shop saying, hey, now I received the money. I can see in my phone SMS, which says 10 shillings received. I want to cash out. So now the whole money transfer became easier. Then the corridors of international remittance became easier. Then we introduced merchant payment that people can pay for their groceries, for their bills, for their utilities, for travels, for cab, and then it's just improved. And then
Yeah.
there was this explosion of data.
Hmm.
Now we could have more leverage because, of course, when you have data, you have apps. Then the apps can take care of a lot of user experience because user doesn't have to learn what were the short codes, what is the number I have to send it to, if the format is right or not, because you can drive a user. And I'm actually trying to say that because it's probably interesting for the people who are thinking about the digital business, why it is important and how that maturity is important to understand. So if you understand your audience digital maturity, the amount of digital tech that you would want to present them is directly correlated. And this was my learning. Had we given a mobile app on day one to them, it would have failed. Even if it
Mhm.
was a great experience, the best of the looks and colors and feels and design, because they didn't have the smartphones.
Right.
Second, they did not have the internet. So what would any app do if you don't have these two basic capabilities? So a digital
Mhm.
experience is also directly related to end consumer and the consumer's capabilities and capacities to kind of adapt to that. And that's where
Yeah.
digital marketing or digital becomes so important for any business owner to define their audience first and then
Mhm.
define what kind of digital they want. It could be very simple like SMS, but it could be as advanced as AI, where you just walk in, you walk into an Amazon store, you just pick up for certain stuff and you get out and you get the bill.
Yeah.
So it could range from anywhere to anywhere, and not necessarily everybody has to adapt everything. It is most important to understand what your audience want, what your customers want, what is the maturity around that, and then slowly take them through the journey. So this is always I say the technology users should not reach out to technology. It's the technology that has to bridge the gap coming to the user. And that's where,
Mhm.
I always pay a lot of attention on the user experience, user journey, because you may have great ideas, but it won't work if your users are not ready.
What's interesting about your experience, and we talked about this a little bit off camera, is that most people in the world who start on digital, whether from a consumer standpoint or a business standpoint, most people start on the desktop. You actually started mobile first. So like when people are like, "Hey, you need to design mobile first now," a lot of people have to like switch that in their brain and be like that's hard. How do I do that? It's natural for you because that's what you've been doing your whole career.
Exactly. I think that helped me a lot. And that's why I said it's a combination of luck and some kind of brave decision making. Because when I was
Mhm.
moving out of my college, I was like, let's go to this new technology. Nobody knew where it is going. Everybody thought it is about selling SIM card. It was just about, I would say, that feeling where, and probably the
Yeah.
destiny where it wanted me to be. So there I am. But yes, you're right. My when you say technology, when you say digital experience, my first instance is not website. My first instance is how would a user use it on the phone? How would they
Yeah.
see the phone? And I've seen the evolution of Series 40, 60 phones to an iPhone to now the much, evolved Android or iPhones or the smartphones, from the journey where people would have a small Nokia 3300
Yeah.
or 3310 just to use to send SMS. So I've lived that journey of people being so naive or so novice to now who are extremely, at least eligible. Maybe some of them are not using. And I can tell you an example. My mom, she would not use a phone until like 2 years back. Only for calling was her purpose.
Hmm.
So for her,
Mhm.
a landline phone or a mobile phone was no different. Just she could carry
Yeah.
the mobile phone in her pocket. But ever since she has got upgraded to using the content, getting engaged with these, businesses or with this with this whole concept through mobile, with that ease of usage, she has hooked on it. Now she
Mhm.
uses FaceTime better than me. She uses WhatsApp better than me. She uses, those YouTube videos better than me. She consumes content like anything. She's now, it
Mhm.
has kind of become a fuel. And this is what I say. When data and technology improve, they can take any amount of user slowly with them if you're solving their need. If you're trying to create a need to them, then the digital maturity play a lot of big part around it. And that's where most of the people see failure, because you would have seen people would come up with amazing tech and they'll be like, it's not picking up. What have
Yeah.
I done wrong? I have thought the best for my customer, but it is what you have thought the best for your customer. It's not what customers thought the best for himself. So this is the basic difference. The intent is good. A lot of the business owners come with a great place, come from a great place or come with a good thought of giving the best facilities to their customers. But the end up not being successful is primarily because they're not understood their customer side. They've not
For
understood
sure.
what does the customer want as a digital experience. And that's what is the key. The understanding of the customer centricity is so core to giving any kind of experience. I mean, some people, you would realize in some business, they actually don't want a digital experience. They're like, guys, for us, the best experience is if I can walk into a room and a personal, attendee
Yeah.
can come and we can discuss in person. That's what we want.
Mhm.
And that's like, and you would be surprised to know there are a lot of banks, private banks in Europe who offer these services, and the minimum balance is like a couple of millions to start opening an account in those banks. So you can imagine the rich of the rich people are sitting there, and all they want as an experience is a phone, one-on-one talk. But if they would say, no, 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 everything is all digital, you have to go to the phone, to the mobile banking, they won't get those customers. So
Yeah.
it is important to build experience, to build digital. How much and what is something that needs to be derived from the user, from the consumer, not as a business owner yourself. And
Right.
that would save you a lot of energy, a lot of money, a lot of time. Rather invest in understanding the or discovering the problem of the consumer, and then provide the facility, because every time technology is going to improve. What you will build today would never remain tomorrow same. The technology would improve, the techniques would improve, the methods would improve. So give what is required versus just so a lot of things thinking it would be best for your businesses.
What ended up taking you to Amsterdam? Was it family? Was it work? How did you end up there?
Yeah, so I had my a small startup that I did previously in my previous jobs or career, and this is
Mhm.
one of the places that I found quite good. Centrally located, I could be closer to my customers. And at that time, we were doing a marketing tech business of engagement, customer engagement, improving retail companies to kind of use their physical product which are sold in the retail shop, but use that retail space to engage with their customers online. So we kind of amalgamated an approach which is offline and online going hand in hand together for big companies, big retail CPG companies to engage with their customers. So that is
Mhm.
something that brought me back to Europe, because most of the CPG companies headquarters are around here or in US. So it kind of brought me closer to my customer. And of course, I was spending a lot of time traveling. So it was also to do with family, that I can spend more time traveling less
Yeah.
with my family. I had a small daughter at that time. So three, she's not spending enough time with me. So all the combination of my family, closer to the customer, and growth of business got me to Amsterdam.
What are you currently working on that excites you, Akshay?
I work currently on many things. One of the main things that I work with is at Boku, which is where we are building technologies, the marketing technologies that lay on top of the payments to enable our digital merchants span globally. So if you would see, all the big merchants who go global, they do partnerships, they bring out different offers to enable paying users. So Boku primarily is a payment company, and where we focus on is local payment. So we know now every country, every economy is focusing on local payments, and they're kind of creating their own system. If you see Pix in Brazil, UPI in India, there are a lot. I mean, there are
Yeah.
SEPA in Europe. So there are a lot of local payment methods that are being populated by government, promoted by government. So Boku basically essentially ties up all of this together in a network. So we have a strong payment network of the local payment methods. And then we kind of help our merchants to go global in those regions and use those local payment methods seamlessly. That's something that Boku does. But what we add as value on top of that layer is we kind of bring that safe space for the marketeers and for the payment guys to co-innovate certain actions towards the common goal. So common goals could be like acquiring new paying customers, decreasing the cost of customer acquisition. How do we increase the lifetime value of our customers? How can we bring the best product with the best pricing in the market? So now this kind of amalgamates the marketing and sales guys or the payment guys together to bring a
Mhm.
strategy in a particular region, in a particular market, with particular partners to expand themselves. So that's something which is very exciting, because now when we see like, direct to consumer is kind of getting a bit of saturated. So the partnerships will start to flourish, and it's not new. From 1,000 years, it's the same. First it's the
Yeah.
partnership, then it's got solo, then again it has to be partnership. So now I think the age is moving towards more partnerships than solo. When you imagine when Netflix came, they all came solo. Spotify
Yeah.
came solo. Everybody came solo, and now it's time to consolidate to have partners. So now the
Mhm.
partnership era will begin. So we specialize in that segment of enabling these partnerships, building the right products for the market, for the consumers. How would consumer go about it? What is the consumer journey? What kind of right offers they should be presenting in which market? So it's a bit of
Mm.
marketing and a bit of payments, but it is really
Mhm.
exciting because it involves almost all the big
Mhm.
companies you can think about. I cannot name them, of course, on the podcast, but
Sure.
they're all
Yeah.
big companies. You can think the world largest, companies, digital companies that you can think of. They are our customers, and it's fun to grow with them because they're solving some real challenges out there, and people.
Yeah.
There's so many billions of people associated with them that we can get to work for, which is exciting. But the second, very more more exciting, that I think from a personal perspective is my role, which I play as a mentor to a lot of startup, executives. So I've learned
Hmm.
from my startup a lot of things. I have learned a lot from my experiences of failures, probably thousands of failures, which I do not want them to repeat, or not me. They do not. They should not repeat. So I
Yeah.
kind of has created frameworks, during my sabbatical, which now I apply with those people. I listen to them like a friend, and of course, I learn about their business, their goals, their motivation, and help
Hmm.
them structure how do they want to grow. If somebody comes from from pre-seed, which is like they've still identified, they have to still identify the MVP, they have to still identify the product market fit. I help them to identify that, have that right mind frame, that right execution frameworks. But some people come say in Series C, Series D, which is where more about how do we scale this? Because most of the people find product market fit, and a good startup fail to scale. Because what they don't realize, again, as I said, they don't use technology in a proper way to scale. They identified product market fit in the best way. So they know this is the problem they're solving. Great. They got identification, they got their validations. But what they kind of fail at that point of time is to scale it. So they,
Hmm.
help them with that to kind of create those frameworks, to build those execution strategies with them, to set up their org structure in the right way so that they're not missing out the essence of the product, but they're not also missing out the essence of scaling up. So scalability does not mean more resources and more revenue. Scalability is more revenue with least of the resources. And for that, the act of prioritization, basic classic, product management principles about how do you create, what
Yeah.
is your roadmap? What is your prioritization? What is your, how do you really, keep customers at center? How would you scale large? How would you really support your customers as a whole product? Core product is what product market fit, but the whole
Hmm.
product is about the execution. How are you executing it? How are you repeating it? How are you becoming dependable of delivering the same thing at a larger scale? So this is something I do a lot, and I really feel very very happy and very satisfied when I do that, because it gives me a lot of peace that I'm giving it back to the society in some form. I can help them not do the
Yeah.
same mistakes what I did. I can help them with some guidance and direction that I have seen in the world, what I'm really experiencing and with my knowledge. Of course, the decision remains there. The final decision is always theirs. But I've seen a lot of people getting benefited, and they come back. They all become friends. So what I'm growing is
Yeah.
growing a lot of friends in my network, which is good for me.
I love that you're giving back. I love that you're able to build that framework and now pass it on to the next generation of business owners and help them not make the same mistakes that you did and get faster to where you are than you were able to get just learning through those same mistakes that you had or that you had to experience on your own. If we were to dive into the technical side of things here, the first thing I want to do is sort of lay a base of like what is digital product management, how like and why is it important to consider digital product management when considering user experience and online conversion. Um, let's talk through that first. So give a high level for anybody who's listening who maybe doesn't quite understand what digital product management is, and then tie that to why it's important for the online conversion and end user experience.
If I have to give a basic understanding of product management, and digital is always a term associated because we will solve it through technology digitally, not like
Mm-hmm.
manual labor. So product management, structure is about identifying the problems. I think problem discovery. So that's the
Uh-huh.
major part of it. And then we talk about solutions. So we don't talk about solutions in the beginning. And that the mindset I always try to tell people that what do you think about digital product management as the base, as a construct, and then identify your matrix. So first we have to identify whose problem are we solving. So do we even know who is our customer? So what is the problem? What is the problem that we are solving for that person or for that individual, for that partner? Then going back into the depth of it, how big is the problem? Are we trying to solve a problem only for LI? Are we trying to solve a problem for thousands of digital marketers who are trying to scale or do something which is different? So then that gives you a size. So by the time you are defined with whose problem are you solving, what is the problem you're solving, how big is the problem you're solving, you kind of come to a consensus within your own mind and within your stakeholders that you are identifying a right set of problem, and then you put forward, because every problem may have different solutions. So that's where the perspectives come into the picture, where you bring in all the stakeholders to bring perspective. Somebody would say, okay, I want to do this, maybe this is the way problem will be solved. Somebody would say, by the way, that's the right method to do it. You may have your own expectations of solving it through technology, which is where, in previous times, most of the times used to happen when companies used to bring out tech solutions thinking that's the best way you can solve customers' problem, and they would not strike. Typically is this. So when you kind of do this exercise, and we call it, I think it is not a hidden framework. Google, kind of came up with this framework quite some time back. I think more than a decade back. It's called design sprints, which is
Hmm.
what helps to identify the right problem, the depth of the problem, understand the perspectives of various, stakeholders, and kind of come to a lot of conclusions saying, okay, we understand the problem, we understand the user, we understand the journey. Now, these could be the 5 potential ways we can solve it. And then becomes, that becomes your starting point of solving those problems because now you have 5 ways to go. What you do in that case is adapt each of the sides or each of the solutions and do usability testing while you're discussing, while you're thinking about it. So usability testing is okay. I may have X as one way of doing it. Let me check back with say 5 users. Does it make sense? Will they adapt? What is the challenge? So then you basically test all your hypotheses, all 4 or 5 solutions that you have, and you would see eventually you would see you're coming down to one or two. And
Hmm.
then comes the usability part. That's where you include your user designers or your UX guys to say, okay, guys, you finally these two, which do you think can turn out to be the best one? And eventually you would see people approach, coming to one or two. And that's where
Yeah.
our old method of A/B test always helps to identify, okay, will A work or will B work? So it's like a very basic technology, technical, I would not say technology, it's a technical framework of
Yeah.
identifying that there is a problem, there could be potential solutions. What would be the best possible solution that would fit in with our users' demands and needs? So when you design solutions like this, you always have user at the heart of it. You're not really ignoring user at any point of time. It all started with user. It all started with the testability. It all started with understanding their needs. It all starts with how do they feel about it, and finally bringing out that solution. So they are always at the heart. So the likelihood of your solutions that you're building for your users is of successful being successful is more because you
Yes.
have identified the right ways, you have struck the right chords. So the likelihood of your solutions is much higher. The likelihood of picking it up is much better. And I mean, I can tell you one of the companies that does it at scale and the best is booking.com.
Hmm.
You would not believe at any point of time in booking.com, at any point of time on live sites, there must be almost like 2000 plus A/B tests going on at the same time
Wow.
as a user. They're testing everything about how you do, how you're doing stuff. And that's where the product management of consumer facing products versus platform facing products have changed in time. 10 years back, people would not differentiate the product managers as B2B product managers or B2C product managers. But this has really evolved to a level where people are saying, okay, I am a B2B product manager, which means I know how to build those tools, technically going back into the systems and build it. But B2C product managers are the ones who are actually identifying the journey of the user from the time they kind of start with, and that's where I would talk about the funnel. So there are different frameworks. You can call it triple A, triple R. I use AIDAOR because when they get attention, which is the first A, then I is when they show the first interest, then D is on action is do they take any action? Finally, decision, onboarding, and retention. So you plot that journey of a consumer on on the idea of framework, and then you see at what point they are dropping off, what is the point where you can pick up. When you are building the solutions and you're building in each segment, are they dropping off at the very beginning? Maybe the possibility is they didn't even like your product. Forget about the color coding and the context and the change. Maybe if they like the product, then they have dropped to the second level, maybe the price point, maybe it's the availability, maybe it is, the design. You can then kind of fetch those small points. As I said, whose problem are you solving? What is the problem? These data points give you the depth of the problem, but you're very close to users. You're very close to how a user is engaging with your business, whether your business is in the form of, selling goods or selling services, but how does a user engage and what is the journey of that user right from the beginning until they start recommending you to different people, saying, LI's digital services, marketing services are the best in the world. And here are the reasons. Then he takes it from the beginning, he understands what we do, what is the problem. And you know what? He doesn't even have to spend one-on-one with us. He has tools So he has digital tools that I can go through with a couple of questionnaires and a couple of thought process. And then he has this framework that comes back to us saying, guys, you might need to solve not this problem, but this problem, because the problem is not in your product. The problem is the way you're positioning it. Again, it kind of defines, and this is where if you kind of combine everything, it would be called as digital product management. But originally it starts from basic concept of problem discovery and identifying that problem discovery to a particular user set, not in general. Because if you try to solve everybody's problem to the same solution, it will never work.
So I think you hit the nail on the head right there, speaking through that whole process. And I think what I really want the users or listeners of this podcast to take away is the importance of the user journey. And digital product managers are really, really good at that. And there's multiple frameworks, like you just mentioned, to make that happen. But I think in the podcast, we've talked about, a lot of people have addressed understanding who your audience is. Very few people, I've probably had 3 people who have talked about what happens after that, the journey after that. So yeah, you may know that your audience is a male between this age and this age that lives in this region that has this, type of income. You may understand that about your audience, but if you don't know the journey that they go through and you map it out,
Right.
a tool that I use to do that is Lucid Charts. There's lots of tools that you can use,
Correct.
but you say, okay, from inception 1, and depending on what channel they come through, if they come through SEO, here is their journey. If they come through paid
Yes.
advertising, here's their journey, right? And each one could be different. And where do they get the downloads? Where do they, exit the funnel? Where do they, struggle clicking the right buttons on the website? Where do they, how do you nurture them all the way down that funnel, all the way to the purchase, and then beyond the purchase too, depending on the type of product that you have. If it's a consumable, how do you get them to come back? If it's a SaaS product, how do you keep them engaged and retention and stuff? The journey goes all the way as far as you can imagine, right? And I think I would encourage the listeners right now to go and look up some of the frameworks you're talking about and do that for their business, because I think it will be enlightening to know,
Yes.
just like you said, is the product the problem? Is it the positioning of the product the problem? Is it the, maybe I'm just lazy and not sending the right email at the right time or the right SMS or whatever? Like, I think I think you hit that spot on.
No, I think it makes complete sense because most of the people think that just including some digital tools will enhance their digital business. But that's not the correct way. Thinking that, okay, let me have a CRM system that will work. Maybe let's have an email system. And that's how most of look, it's not their fault as well. The way digital marketing has evolved and the way digital marketing suppliers or vendors have evolved, they kind of make you believe that it is the right thing. You need to have a right e-commerce tool with you. You need to have the right, CRM tool with you. You need to have the right content management tool with you. You need to have the right
Yeah.
AI tool with you. They will sell you all of that, but it's their job to sell. The thing is, as a business owner, what is your need is most important. You might not need all of them, or you might need everything of them, but you have to be sure about what you need. And that's why it is important not to just know your customer, but to know the journey of the customer. How does that customer engage with you? Why did that customer even come for the first place? And then why is that customer continuing to be with you? What is the journey? What is that whole, framework around the journey of the customer associated or engaging with your business? And at what point of time would you like to upgrade the technology skills or the tool to make their lives better? I mean, if you remember, one of the things that we did at Young Living was bringing out the social commerce. Remember
Yeah.
that? So when people used to go on our websites, it used to be spinning wheel. Everybody used to be like, oh my God, it take us like half an hour to figure out what we want in our cart and then check out. And sometimes it goes through, it's a long session. And what
Yeah.
we kind of, because we're mapping that journey, what we realized, most of the people come for certain products, which might have been recommended by the brand partner. So what we identified, like, okay, this is a great thing. So now, for example, if one brand partner, a diamond, is recommending a series of products, let's make a list of that series of products by that brand partner. And you know what? They can simply create that as a list where people can click, buy, out, done. So they don't have to go through the whole process of assembling the cart, touching the product, putting them into the whole thing, and then checking out. So it was just a basic, simple example. We studied a lot of videos of how people would come and stuck at one place, or they're struggling to find, because you remember Young Living had like 2,000 products. More than that.
Yeah.
So to find what you need versus you exactly know what you're searching for. And now you have a lead. So if you are somebody who I'm looking up at, and if I want to follow Li's, night routine, then you already have a list on your social media, which is Instagram. You click or whatever, I mean, TikTok or whatever. You click on that and you straight into the checkout box with everything included. So that made
Yeah.
their life easier because we realized most of the people are dropping off, not because they don't want to purchase, because we did that customer journey as well. We did interviews as well. It is because of the hassle of spending half an hour and then not getting through, hassle of understanding the product because half of them didn't even know what the products are. So that was one
Yeah.
classic example that really changed the way, people would buy things from a complex environment. And
Yeah.
similarly, as I said, so we might not have required a full CRM tool for that. A simple, a launch of a social commerce tool just solves the problem. So how do you apply the digital tools and what tools do you need? It all starts from what your users need, what your business has to offer. And that combines, gives you the journey of the user. And then you identify in that user journey what tools you require to really bring the experience or elevate the experience of your users to the next level.
So there's a lot of struggles I see, especially with bigger companies, aligning new digital products with business goals. So how do you ensure that the user experience remains a priority when developing a new digital product? And then also, how do you balance between user needs and the data you have versus business goals and managing products?
I would say they are two sides of the same coin. When I started about the lean product management, if you know what problem are you solving, and when you know how big is the problem, the answer lies there. The moment you know
Mm,
how big is the problem, it is directly related to the key metrics that you want to achieve. If you know you're solving a problem of somebody to check out, you can obviously translate it into numbers because then
yeah,
suddenly the management can see, and this is something I always promote with my product managers, is to think more commercial in that way. When you're solving a problem, you are solving a problem because it will solve something. So it is always the next aspect of critical thinking. If you solve this, what will happen? Okay. If this happens, then what will happen? And then what will happen? Okay. Eventually say, okay, you know what? It will increase the user conversion. Great. That's what we want. If you know it will
yeah,
increase the user conversion, then what is the business case? How much do you think will it, how much can you project that it will change? And that finally correlates to the North Star matrix that any company is looking for. Basically, all the big digital merchants are looking for only a couple of key things. One, how can I get more paying users? How can I, reduce the cost of customer acquisition? How can I increase the lifetime value of my customer? Basically, how can I optimize my operation? How can I do, more in less? And if you
yeah,
can relate to all of that, that becomes your company goal. Because if you have increased the conversions, for example, in Bookco, we increase the conversions, it's more transactions. More transactions means more revenue for them, which in turn mean more revenue for Bookco. So it is all related. It's not very different. When you say, how do you really balance that? So if you are true to your business, if you're true to your users, any improvement that you would do to solve the problem will eventually result in building something, either saving some money from your side, also a business case, or bringing new money into the system or new revenue streams or new opportunities, which is also a business case. So in both ways, if you think in a more commercial way, you're solving a problem, this is a question, what you ask would not arise because that automatically would come into the era of saying, okay, if you're doing this problem, it is going to impact this goal. So which is where the OKRs help for people, for product managers to come along saying, guys, you know what? All of you are working together for this common goal, but this common goal is directly related with this matrix, which affects this, North Star matrix of my company. It is as simple, to be honest.
So in a nutshell, it comes down to data. You get the data and you go down those steps. So this happens, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens. And if the data says this is better in this regard, there's higher conversion, it's harder for somebody maybe in upper management to push back and say, well, we don't want that, right? Because it doesn't align with this goal over here. But the goals are usually higher conversion. Is that the same answer when you're trying to align between different departments within the company, like marketing and sales? Sometimes marketing has their own goals, sales has their own goals, digital has their own goals. Is that the same answer for them, or do you have a different approach to address that concern?
Data is always, important. Look, data is beneficial when it comes to identifying the gaps and identifying the
Mm-hmm.
right problem statements. But where data is most beneficial is identifying the prioritization. At the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, if technology has to deliver a certain thing, so nobody says, marketing, your goals are not important as sales, as supply chain, as others. It is the data that shows which is the most important of all of them. So what it brings is it brings the right amount of harmonization in prioritization. People can see together in the same room because at the end of the day, all of them are working for a company's common goal. And then their
Mhm.
individual goal suddenly starts to split up and they say, okay, if we do this, this will impact the supply chain, which is like 10 times bigger than my small marketing goal. I might want to do it. Maybe it's number 4 in priority, but I'm okay with
Yeah.
that because then they can see the reality. You're bringing them in a more democratic way of decision making by using data, prioritizing it in the right. So it is a prioritization that data really helps rather and identifying the gaps, not in the middle of everything. So it is always good to use data to to push back certain things, but data is most important when it comes to actually prioritization.
As you're talking through this, I'm visually thinking of like the tools that we use to like help visualize all of those steps and aligning all of the departments. The last podcast I just did was with a guy named Karthik Suresh, and he owns company Ignition, and you should look into
Yeah,
this too as well. But I want to bring it up to the audience as well. It helps in that process, the digital product management process, and it involves AI as well. So just sort of a shout out to Karthik and what he's doing over there. You should check it out, and the audience should check it out again,
definitely.
because it does help sort of with that visualization as well. It helps align those departments. It helps get the right data and message up to the executive team. So it's a pretty awesome tool. Um,
Perfect.
and so what advice do you have? What advice would you give to business owners that are looking to enhance their digital product management offering?
Same, I think. Coming back to the same concept, understand your users well, understand your business well, what kind of problems are you solving, and then through their journey, enhance and elevate their experience. So when you are hiring to invest in right people who understands your business. So all product managers are not same. You may want to hire product managers which are coming from very reputed companies, but actually may not be even suitable for you because they don't understand the business. So hire the right individuals, invest in right people so that they understand your business well and then can identify and map the gap of your users versus what you have to offer and then build your offerings around it. So always my advice is invest in people so that they can build right processes and tools and for your product to be enhanced to the next level. So it's always people, process, and finally the products that would enhance your journeys towards your end customers.
People, processes, products. I love it. How do you foresee the future of user experience shaping, through digital product management over the next 5 years?
I think it will go more contextual. So the way things have been until now, and it has been already quite a lot done, but I think the way the AI and machine learning are improving things, it is no more how an individual think bases the data analysis. It is now more about how a user engages with the customer, with the systems. And that's where the machine learning and AI will help to bring more context, more softness into the system. So today, if you have to do A/B tests, run at the same time, versus if a machine learning algorithm has to run it, it is much more scalable, much more different. So what I see is people would be more sensitive towards or more empathetic towards what their user feel or their user behave and how they go through their journey. And AI driven, UI, the next steps is it's not going to be constant. It's going to be super dynamic. So what LI sees on a particular website versus what Akshay sees on a particular website today is also kind of slightly different, but it is going to be more contextual going forward. So I think that would bring more warmth to how customers engage with their businesses or with their, with the businesses that they want to, and they would become much more, I would say, hooked on. And whoever invests in this kind of, atmosphere would see a
Yeah.
longevity in their customer business. Otherwise, there's a reason for them to get bored. But now with going forward with the technological advancements, I don't see businesses going or looking away from the fact that let's not get people bored from our business. Let them be part of it. So that's why you would see a lot of loyalty programs, user generated content programs or training modules, a lot of variety around the course that are going to come into this whole experience where people feel it's their space that they can go to. So the user experience will change, and people are going into this whole user journey is quite intense. It would come down from bigger companies like Booking.com to even smaller businesses. They would understand the value, and that's where the core technology systems, which today only these big companies can afford, are going to come down to that level where normal, small, medium business can also afford, and they can really apply to their businesses and to their customers. So I think that's where it would change a lot of perspective, especially
Yeah.
locally. The local context would start coming in.
Okay. So if I'm a business owner listening to this and I'm like, okay, that's where the future's going up over here, and I'm right here, what advice do you have for me to be able to go from here to here over the next 5 years without being left behind and having my competitor take over?
I would say be close to your users, as close
Mm.
as you can, understand what their needs are, how they're improving, and keep a watch on, generic tools or advancements that are happening in the digital marketing space, because
Mm-hmm.
that can give you an insight. Again, it's the mapping. This is my customer journey. These are my challenges that I see, and these are the tools available. So start mapping those. Today, you might not be able to afford some of them, but very, very soon, there's an entrepreneur sitting there trying to disrupt that bigger tool and bring it for the common SMBs. So that's the
Yeah.
time when you would have to adopt it. So it's always a caution when to adopt, because of course it's a cost of affordability and doing things, plan it in that way. So keep
Mm-hmm.
an eye on the technological advancements, but be very close to what your consumer wants.
Great advice. Akshay, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on the call today and teach us, give us your wealth of knowledge around digital product management and user experience. I can tell you're authentic. I can tell that you've really had the experience over many years to be able to come on and speak to this. And you do an amazing job of storytelling. And it's really
Thank
captivating
you so
too.
much.
Talking about your past experiences and stuff is really captivating to hear how you solve different problems for different companies. And so I appreciate that about how you've portrayed yourself today. At the end of every podcast, I ask two different questions. The first one is if you could go back to your younger self and give advice, what would that be?
If I would go back, I would say focus more on your family and health, and be as pragmatic to yourself, because those are the two things that really keep you, really well. I mean, I learned about it quite late, and
Mm-hmm.
ever since I started putting that as the core center of my life, the way I think has changed, transformed, because then they are also one of my users with whom I live, and that changes completely everything. So I would say focus more on your health and family. That's something, some good advice that I can say people should read and talk about more. And secondly, I think I would say, be honest to the society. If you have learned something, try to give it back. That's something I learned quite late in my life, but I'm enjoying it now, and I think it's worth every second I spend on it.
It's powerful. I like that. What books, podcasts, or leaders currently inspire you?
Definitely, you should look at Eli's Postcard podcast. It's amazing. I've learned so much about listening so many podcasts. One important book that I would say people to really read about is called Range, and it talks about how a generalist succeed in normal life than specialists. So it's a nice tussle between the generalist and the specialist, and nothing is wrong or right, but you would see the variety of how generalists can take up a lot of things and build from where they can start. And you would see an example starting with you know Roger Federer and his life about expansion.
Okay.
So that's a great book to read. To be honest.
Nice. I'll have to look that one up. I haven't read that one yet. Well, again, Akshay, thank you so much for taking the time to jump on the call today. I'm excited for this episode to come out, and I think it's going to add a lot of value.
Absolutely. I'm so happy that you invited me on this, and I'm thankful that you kind of gave me a chance to speak about it on your podcast. Many people would listen, and I hope it helps some people to understand and frame their thought process. But thank you so much for having me here. Really appreciate
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to all those listening, we'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks so much for listening to the episode today. Listen, I know how valuable an hour of your time can be, and for you to take that busy time out of your day and spend it with us, it really means a lot. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking and subscribing on whatever platform you're on. And don't forget to leave a comment. Tell us what you thought about the interview. Ask us questions. Let us know what other digital topics you'd like to hear about in the future. We're here to add value to your life and elevate your digital presence online. If you'd like some help doing that, reach out to me at fireusmarketing.com. See you on the next one.